Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour. I am your host, stepping in. LJ is here, but LJ is trying to preserve his golden voice that is plagued by this cough over the last month. So I'm taking over the hosting duties tonight for another Victory Green Hour as the Eagles improve to 13-3, crushing the Dallas Cowboys 41-7 in a game in which LJ was actually there. So I'm sure his voice was not helped by being there and cheering on the Eagles either. So make sure you follow me on Twitter at Connor10. Follow LJ Harrell54. You can also find us at the Kelly Green Hour at Kelly Green Hour. And of course, go and find the Eagles Pinpool Network everywhere you listen to podcasts. We're the Eagles Pinpool Network, YouTube, Eagles Pinpool Network, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. Go and find us there. Follow us, like us, download us. We appreciate all the support that we get from you guys. So as I kind of led off with, the Eagles ended up dominating the Dallas Cowboys and securing the NFC East championship, the now 20th straight season with no repeat champion for the NFC East. We also locked up the number 2 seed at the same time, which was a bonus. But the 1 seed is looking out of reach, but that's okay. But we're going to dive into some of the discussions around what is going to happen next week, especially because Saquon Barkley put himself very, very much in the driver's seat of potentially breaking a 40-year-old record. But first, LJ, what's up beyond being sick?
That's pretty much it. It was a blast at the game yesterday. Just the atmosphere, excuse me. Jesus, of course, as soon as I start talking, the atmosphere at the link was awesome, especially, the Dallas sucks chants. The pick six to start for CJGJ, the place was rocking. It was crazy. And then when Saquon passed the 2,000-yard mark and Sirianni called a timeout, and they made note of it, the place got loud again. The atmosphere was just outstanding. Even though Dallas sucks, or Dallas is terrible this year, and the Eagles, all they needed to do was win the 1 game to wrap up the East and the number 2 seed. It's still Eagles-Dallas. Anything can happen, even if it's backup quarterback versus backup quarterback, or third-string quarterback for that matter, with Tanner McKee, who I think should be the backup, but that's a different story for a different day. He looks better. He looked better than Kenny Pickett. But yeah, no, it was a great game, great atmosphere. Already looking forward to another game next year. Thinking about going to Buffalo because that's going to depend on the time of year. Because I don't want to go in the winter time and when they probably
don't want to go help shovel.
No, but if the Eagles because the Eagles go to Buffalo next year because that's the 17th game, the AFC East opponent in the same position would be the Bills. That game's in September, October. I might be there. It should be a fun time. But yeah,
I feel like that game will be too good for them to put that early in the year. I don't know if they do it, but we'll see. We'll see.
Let's hypothetically, if the Bills win the Super Bowl, the Bills would have the Thursday night opener. They would face the Chiefs. I don't know if the Chiefs are a home game next year for them, but Eagles-Bills would do whopping numbers on opening night.
Absolutely.
That would be crazy. But obviously that's different story for a different day. But yeah, no, you're right. And that could be a matchup you might want to save, but Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Bills, Eagles, the 2 fan bases, whenever they play that game, it's going to be insane. But yeah, Definitely. That's the game I'm looking towards for next year. We'll see what happens in terms of scheduling and whatnot. But in terms of this past game, like I said, the atmosphere was outstanding. Clinching the division, killing the Cowboys, nothing, and all in the Kelly Green jerseys, which obviously, the name of our podcast, Kelly Green Hour, we enjoy it and we love it.
Definitely. My buddy is a massive Raiders fan, so we've already kind of opened the door for maybe a trip next year to Philadelphia for that Eagles and Raiders game. But we're going to see. There's still a lot of time between now and then, and hopefully lots of episodes, especially leading into the playoffs with this Philadelphia Eagles team this year. where do we start? I mean, it was pretty much domination from the get-go. I guess the first few drives were a bit spotty because it was interception TD, then Dallas Cowboys TD, and then we traded punts back and forth for 2 drives, and then we started to pull away.
I was worried at first because without Nakobe Dean, Dallas was getting some yards on the ground and moving the football. Even after the pick six, like you said, that Dallas went down and scored. But the Eagles, again, Vic Fangio deserves a lot of credit, just like he's done the entire season, had made adjustments. And Cooper Rush, they only sacked him once, but they forced 4 turnovers. I think so. I heard a stat in the first 4 games, the Eagles forced 2 turnovers. Since the bye, they've forced 23. I think, like that's almost 2 a game. But and in the last 2 games, they forced 9. Mm-hmm. So, like, they've been doing an outstanding job of forcing turnovers. And it's unfortunate. I don't want to say it's unfortunate, but, like, thinking about the teams that we are going to potentially face, Green Bay or Washington in the first round of the playoffs, I mean, it's going to be a tough draw. Like, having a number 2 seed, you think you'd have an easy team. You're going to have a team that's going to win 12 games. Like, it's going to be tough, obviously, in the first round of the playoffs. And then, like, there's something that we'll talk about Friday or later this week whenever we do the preview show for the Giants game. But, like, if Jalen is cleared, do you want to play him? Or just letting him sit out for 3 weeks? Is that going to be fine? Or, do you want to let Saquon go for the record? He needs 101 yards. Like, there's going to be so many questions. And Nick Sirianni has a huge decision because we remember last year in the meaningless game up in Jersey, and A.J. Brown got hurt. And what did the Eagles look like? Now, granted, last year's team kind of they gave up. Let's be honest. That team gave up.
Yep.
In the playoff game, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox were the 2 best defensive players. Nobody else wanted to tackle. And on offense, it was Devontae Smith. Other than that, nobody else showed up. So there's going to be a bunch of questions. I don't know who's going to make this decision. Is it going to be Sirianni? Is it going to be the players? Is it going to be Roseman and Lurie? Like, it's going to be I don't know if it's going to be like a no-win situation here for Sirianni, or it's because what he did in the second half, it literally was like, we're giving the ball to Saquon every time. And that's what happened. They handed the ball off to Saquon. He had 31 carries, 167 yards or whatever it was. But it was like, let's just hand it off to Saquon and let him do his thing, get him to 2,000. And I kind of thought, all right, they wanted to get to 2,000 because once he got to 2,000, he came out. And maybe that's because we won't see him next week. But 100 yards, like, he had 109 yards against Washington in the first quarter. I think they could have left him out a little bit longer in this game and shrunk the number even more because I'm glad they didn't, though, because Dallas is. You saw what happened. Dallas was dirty. Like, Sidney Brown got tossed.
But what about New York? Like, especially Saquon. That's my biggest concern.
I know they won this week, and that was a mistake for them. They had a chance for the number 1 overall pick to get Shador, and now they're down to number 3, I think. But the only players on that team that are really trying are Malik Neighbors on the defensive side of the football. Nobody cares. Like, Dexter Lawrence is one of Saquon's best friends. Like, he was at his wedding. And I'm not saying that, like, they're obviously going to go out there and try, but he could have set his career high against the Giants earlier this year. That Giants defense gives up 160 some odd yards. He could get 100 yards in the first quarter. And
that's kind of the hope that people are talking about is, do you play him? Hopefully he gets it in the first quarter, maybe in the first half, and then you can pull him for the rest of the game. But the thing is, if you have a banged up offensive line, if you have Jalen Hurts, like, the odds are, if Hurts is healthy, the offensive line is good to go. You have to put everybody out there. That's the biggest thing with this decision is you have to put out the best of your offense because you're not going to put out the backup wide receivers. You need to make it so that the defense actually is going to have to think and not just know, they're just going to give it to Saquon Barkley every single time.
I mean, Dallas knew that they were just giving it to Saquon and it couldn't stop. Like,
they couldn't do anything. No, it was
so. And the Giants are worse than Dallas's defense. They can know it. They can put 11 guys in the box. But the only way I play Saquon is if the starting offensive line plays. Like, I'm not putting Saquon out there if Trevor Keegan, is he still on the? I don't know. Nick
Well,
Gates is out there.
he's rested he's one of the inactives every week, but one
But
would
and yeah,
assume
also
Keegan might get the chance.
speaking of inactives, you can only have 7 guys. You're not going to be able to bench all 22 starters. Let's put it that way.
No,
I would think like on the defensive side of the ball, I would, Jalen Carter, he's played 85% of the defensive snaps this year. I'd sit him. Darius Slay, I'd sit him.
Nakobe Dean, he's banged
Nakobe
up.
Dean, he has that abdominal injury.
Zach Bond, I mean, he's played an astronomical amount of snaps.
Came off the field limping, so like he probably won't play. There's 4 right there on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side, Lane Johnson sounds like he really doesn't want to play. AJ Brown also sounded like he didn't want to play. So, like, again, there's only so many people that you can not
These guys have been going, man. This is 11 straight weeks. This would be 12 straight weeks, no bye, no time off. The last bye was that long ago. Like, that is tough. This is a gauntlet for these guys. And you can tell some of them are really banged up and could use that, that extended time off from Monday today all the way until they have to play on the Saturday or Sunday of wildcard weekend. The hope for these guys is like, I could really use this 2 weeks right now. But there's a lot of people like inside it's so hard to tell because you can tell there's some of this offensive line that really wants to be a part of history with Saquon Barkley. And then, like you said, there's a guy like Lane Johnson he's getting older. He's banged up every single year. He's more on the side of like, I would love to just take this week off because we've been playing this gauntlet where we've lost only 1 game and we've played 11 straight weeks. This is going to be our 12th straight week. Like there's some guy, it's really tough to say, but you need to have everyone on board to say, we're doing this for Saquon. We're doing this for the record. It's so hard to say though.
So I think like, cause Mailata said that he like being a captain, he's gonna speak his mind and want to pretty much say he wants to go for it. You don't need Lane Johnson to start this week. I think Fred Johnson will be fine at right tackle.
Absolutely. Against this Giants team?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. I mean, I know Brian Burns is out there, but Brian Burns typically lines up on the offense's left side. And again, once Saquon gets it, I'd give him a half, but it might not even take him a half. He might get 100 yards in a quarter and a half. He might get 100 yards in a quarter.
We've seen him break off those 70, 75-yard runs. That's 3/4 of the way there just with one run if you could do one of those. So.
Exactly. So, like, again, it is a tough choice. And I would probably want to get Jalen some playing time if he gets cleared this week, which I can't believe he hasn't been cleared. It's astounding.
I pointed out, I don't know if you watched the Patriots game. I don't blame you if not. Drake May was pulled out for concussion protocol, got sent back in, took another massive shot to the head, and they let him play. Like this concussion protocol, and I get it. It's not a one size fits all. And like you clearly, the 201s are clearly obvious, the fencing thing, but they need to get this right because you cannot have guys like Josh Allen. We've watched Josh Allen get pounded into the ground. And everybody is arguing that it wasn't even a hit to the head. So first of all, it was, but if we're going to say that it's not even a hit to the head, why would you be putting a guy in concussion protocol for a play that he didn't even get hit in the head in theory? Like you can't, it's not a one size fits all. It's not equal. And they definitely need, and maybe we got just one of those independent neurologists that's just really good at his job and looking out for the safety of his players. And Drake May over on Saturday got a guy who was like, this guy's good to go. And then once he's out there and getting up, you take another shot. Obviously, it's like, he looks pretty good to me. So, I mean, it's frustrating because, he should have been clear. But we know at this point, once you're in concussion protocol, I think it's like 60% of players don't play the week after. It's a pretty significant number.
Was in concussion protocol the week before we played the Commanders, and he played the next week.
Well, exactly. That's why it's not one size fits all, but it's near 50-50 where you're going to get the guy back or you're not going to get the guy back. But I agree with you. Like we have a hard enough time with the slow starts. If he goes pretty much 3 weeks without playing football whatsoever, imagine how slow that start could be on a very, very important wildcard weekend game. Like you said, you're getting either Green Bay, who struggles in their own way, but is a team that can definitely go pound for pound with you, or you get the Washington Commanders, who you've gone to war with pretty much twice this year so far. and two very, very different varying circumstances between the Eagles and Commanders. So I don't think like Commanders fans can be like, well, look at the last game, and I don't think we can say, well, look at the last game, because two very different circumstances. One was on a Thursday. One, Jalen Hurts was out within 11 plays of the game. Very different circumstances. So it'll be very interesting to see how things go. But I agree with you. If Jalen Hurts can go, and if you're putting Saquon Barkley out there, I think you put at least get Jalen Hurts out there for a bit of it, and kind of get him to get that feel for the offense and the game again, so that, it's not like, okay, you've been off for 3 weeks and you go into wildcard weekend and the odds are he'd be really slow coming out of the gate, because we are kind of really slow coming out of the gate in most instances.
I mean, we have scored a lot of points in the first. We've finally started scoring points. It was 21 last week. This week was 14, 20, something like that.
7 in the first quarter.
7 in the first quarter, 24 in the first half. They scored every quarter, man. It was, and Cooper Rush, like from Dallas's point of view, Cooper Rush has played well almost against everybody except the Eagles in his career, like when he has started for Dallas.
And even he commented about the atmosphere in Philadelphia and playing there, and he was just like, I don't know what to say. I don't get it, but this is a super hard place to play. And you hear from a lot of people. If you play in Philadelphia, for the most part, people love it. The players love it. They speak so highly of it, despite what the media tries to portray it as. And then you have the players who come there and you're like, this atmosphere is insane to play. That's why I'm glad we locked up the number 2 seed. We took home the NFC East, because as long as we can be playing at home, that is a major advantage to us, to forcing teams outside if they're used to being inside, and B, just having that home field advantage that we know people speak so highly of on the other side of the ball, because it's so difficult to play in the atmosphere.
It really is. And did you hear what Micah Parsons said at the end of the game about, he's like, yeah, they have about 5 big plays. You take those 5 plays away, you take the scoreboard away, it's a close game. Bro, it was 41-7. Y'all had no chance. I heard his name once in the stadium over the loudspeaker, and then I heard the referee say his number twice for penalties, like all sides penalties. So he did nothing. I mean, he obviously wants to be an Eagle.
Besides knocking Kenny Pickett out. But I mean, Kenny Pickett was halfway out. I mean, he was wearing the big vest around his ribs.
Tanner McKee's better. I don't care what anyone says.
I think Tanner McKee looked great, because now, I mean, everyone's talking about.
He was 3 or 4 and threw 2 touchdown passes.
And there's teams that are going to need a quarterback. So if I was Howie, I'd be like, here,
he's trading
try and recoup some Kenny Pickett capital.
I think he might get it wouldn't shock me if he got a 2nd round, 3rd round pick for Kenny Pickett this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look at like a guy like this quarterback class. I know we're getting off the main track of this, but the game was an absolute slaughter fest. But I mean, at the end of the day, this quarterback class is not all that great. And it's a lot of guys that you're taking the shot on and hoping, maybe turn into Jaden Daniels, or maybe turn into something you didn't expect. But so it feels like, like everyone's talking about Sam Darnold's going to get $50 million. Who's going to be willing to pay him the $50 million? There's a chance the Giants are going to be the team, because they just knocked themselves out of the spot you would draft that quarterback at and take that shot at.
If you were the Eagles, speaking of the Giants winning a game they shouldn't have won, say they do start Saquon, say he does get the record, would you, and then you throw out the backups, you let Will Shipley run and Terrion Davis-Price and you have Jahan Dotson.
Let Gainwell keep going.
What'd you say?
I said Kenny Gainwell too. We're fine if he goes out there and gets banged up.
They won't play him.
I know they won't.
Put Jahan Dotson out there and Johnny Wilson and Nick Gates and whatever. And would you kind of lose on purpose so that the Giants get another win and their pick goes back further than it is now?
I mean, I know that like people talk about this so much at the end of the year, like teams can't even tank right. A lot of these guys don't, especially the backups, when they get an opportunity to prove something. Drew Lock is going to work his ass off to get that win no matter what, because these guys don't want to lose. It's not in their DNA. It's
harder to tank in the NFL than it is the NBA.
Yeah. Oh, it's way harder in the NFL to lose. Like the NBA, you can tank easy. You can tank in the NHL. You can tank in the MLB. You see it constantly. There's that ability to do it based on the players you put out there. But, week 18, That's tough to ask these guys to go out and lose because some of them are playing for their jobs for next season. Like a guy like Drew Lock could be playing for an opportunity next year, could be playing to get traded away and do something somewhere else. You don't know with some of these guys. So it's so hard to ask players, even the Eagles players, to lose. Like we have a handful of backups that are free agents. Guy like Fred Johnson, he's a free agent next year. Josh Sweat's a free agent, not that he's going to probably play. But, there's guys that have an opportunity to prove themselves and are going to want to try and prove themselves. So it's hard to ask people to lose. Although I would love to see the Giants go from like 5 to like 7 or 8 and continue to put them into this obscure position where they're probably going to take an offensive lineman that's going to fail again. Like it's so you love to see it because you want to keep the division weaker, especially because you don't know what the Cowboys are going to end up being next year. We like to think they're going to be this bad again, but obviously they're going to get a lot of guys back. And then obviously the Commanders are headed in the right direction. So if you can have a team like the Giants that you can laugh at every year and say, okay, that's 2 wins, check the box. I mean, of course, I'd love to see us try and lose it, but it's hard to ask these guys to do that.
It is. Dang, I wanted to ask you something. What were your thoughts on AJ Brown after he caught the Tanner McKee's first touchdown, and he launched that ball up into the stands. They were able to get it back, which is pretty cool. That whole story. But when I actually mentioned it like right away, as soon as I was like, he threw the ball in the stands. I was like, that's Tanner McKee's first pass. And then in the stadium they showed AJ Brown on the sideline. He had to put his hands on his helmet, and then he did this, like looking over to the side. So it is like just the vibes, and I know we hate the word vibes. The vibes around this team are way different than they were last year. This is more like the 2022 team, and just the way that the camaraderie, the way they work together, the way they play, like how hard they play and all that. I think Kenny Pickett said it after the game. He's like, he says it's like a college feel, with the way that the team is so close and whatnot. So I thought that was a funny like interaction, and AJ Brown offering up to sign his game-worn jersey and give it to the guy. It was pretty cool.
An AJ Brown game-worn signed Kelly Green jersey is way more valuable than Tanner McKee's first touchdown in the NFL. Yeah. I'm sorry to Tanner McKee, but it's the reality. Like that's so cool. Those jerseys are awesome. They look so good. The field looks so good. Like I almost
they need to be the permanent jerseys.
I agree. I agree. But you lose the aura with it. But I mean, the interaction was cool. It was fun to see. And the guy bringing the ball back and AJ Brown, saying, yeah, absolutely, I'll give you something. Like, that's cool. I mean, you love it. And they have a way of getting the ball back whenever they need to get the ball back. It just happens. There's no guy out there. And I mean, you could bid up, but it's like, you want a game-worn jersey that's signed? Sure. That's
unless it was a Cowboys fan.
Like, that's easy for these people to give up. So
unless it was a Cowboys fan that caught the ball.
Yeah, if it was a Cowboys fan, you might have a harder time with it. But I mean, when you look back, I mean, when I look back at the game and I think back to the game, I mean, the Cowboys are so done. Like, I just sit there and I'm like, how can you even consider bringing Mike McCarthy back? The fact that he is at this point, I don't even think he's on the hot seat. Like, they're actually, and I know I was watching some ESPN and stuff, and some people were saying his methods of an offense are outdated. They just don't work. And they're going to continue to try and force this. I don't think it's going to work. I'm okay. Good. Sign McCarthy for 3 more years. You're then going to stick yourself with him for at least 2 of them. So unless he completely flops next year. But this Cowboys team with Mike McCarthy back and everybody healthy, especially we don't know where the Micah Parsons situation is going to go necessarily, strikes me as like the Steelers, middle of the pack, Steelers-esque, 9-8 team that's not going to make the playoffs. And that's just what this Cowboys
Mike Tomlin
team
is 1,000 times better coach than Mike McCarthy.
Yes, Mike Tomlin is a better coach. I agree. But like the Steelers
and the ownership with the Steelers is a lot better.
Oh, definitely. But the Steelers are the kings of mediocrity. They'd be 100% content going 9-8 and 10-7 and just getting in the playoffs and losing over and over and over and over again. That's just
once you get into the dance, you have a shot. Like
exactly. So they obviously the Steelers see it that way. Obviously the Eagles and their fan base don't see it that way. It's Super Bowl or bust, which Jeff Kerr did post a tweet there. Every season we've been 13 wins or better, we've made it to the Super Bowl. So
well, we've also been the number 1 seed those years.
True.
We're the number 2 seed this year. So,
but I mean, you ride it out home until you meet Minnesota or Detroit. Depends who gets that number 1 seed. Like, you would ride it out at home for 2 weeks until you face that team if they're there, because you never know. Like, this NFC is, I think the NFC is going to be harder to get through than the AFC for some of these teams. Like, you literally said it at the start of the episode. You're playing a team that likely is an 11 or 12 win team as the 7 seed. Like, that is crazy to think about. That's how hard it's going to be. Whereas, I don't know. I haven't really looked at the AFC. The Colts were in it up until now. The Miami Dolphins are still in it. The Bengals are still
have what,
in it.
9 wins?
The Bengals, yeah, the only team above 500 fighting for a playoff spot is the Broncos.
It's crazy that the Chiefs face the Broncos this week, and Carson Wentz is going to start. The only team that potentially scares the Chiefs is probably the Bengals. They could literally be like, we'll let the Broncos win, because if the Broncos win, the Broncos make it. Now I know they have the NFC, the AFC North games are Saturday. So like that could be a moot point if Cincinnati were to lose to who's Cincinnati playing? Baltimore? I think Cincinnati's playing Baltimore.
Yeah, I think they're playing Baltimore.
Like that could be a moot point if Cincinnati loses. I also think if Cincinnati makes the playoffs, Joe Burrow should definitely be in the MVP conversation.
It is a conversation. It was all over the airways today, that conversation of he needs to be respected more. But obviously the biggest point is you got to get into the playoffs. If you don't get into the playoffs, you can't be the most valuable player. It just means you're the best player on a really bad team.
I know Jamar Chase is leading the league in reception yards, receiving touchdowns. Do you think Saquon pretty much has the Offensive Player of the Year award wrapped up? Like he's not going to get the MVP because it's a quarterback award? Or do you think it's or do you think Jamar Chase has a legit shot?
I mean, I think you're going to get guys who are going to vote for Jamar Chase, but I mean, Saquon Barkley's season, whether he breaks that record or not, it's rare to see someone even get close to this record. Player with over 2,000 yards rushing. Yeah, it's rare to see it. He's the 9th they call it player, but I think it's all running backs, obviously, whoever over 2,000 rushing yards. But he's the 9th player to get to this point, and that says a lot. Like he's one of the ones who's getting closest to the award or closest to this record that is 40 years old, that you see maybe once every 10 years someone get even remotely closer within the conversation of being close to it. So I don't think you can not give it to Saquon, because Saquon Barkley, to me, I mean, I get it. Some people say, well, look at Saquon Barkley without Jalen Hurts that 1 week against Washington Commanders. Is he really the most valuable player on the team? Look at what Hurts means to Barkley. Look at what Barkley means to Hurts. And look how much the stats are in favor of Barkley over Hurts. Hurts, from a statistical standpoint, is, outside the top 5, outside the top 7 quarterbacks, statistically speaking. Saquon Barkley is the number 1 running back in football. He has completely changed this offense. If you're looking at the one piece that is different, that is completely shifted beyond Kellen Moore, it's Saquon Barkley. So I think you're going to get people who are going to vote for Jamar Chase because he's obviously going to likely walk home with those 3 key categories and be the Triple Crown guy. But what has been done by Saquon Barkley just feels far more special.
I mean, think about it. Adrian Peterson was 8 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's record, 12 years ago, whatever it was.
Exactly. Like every 10 years, you get a guy who you can talk about that record.
Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,000 yards 4 years ago.
Yep.
So it's like
12 years, 4 years, and now we have this one. I mean, it's crazy. They're beasts. They're different. And especially to know Saquon Barkley's doing this on a second contract where running backs are like religiously known to start to fall off the cliff is impressive. And I get it.
Derrick Henry's also having a really good year too. Like Josh Jacobs
for the longest time, and now Saquon just ran away. But
Tech Witten says that was a great passing performance yesterday. # quarterback controversy. I hope you're joking there, which I think you are. The only quarterback controversy there is Tanner McKee should be the number 2 QB. Kenny Pickett should be the emergency QB.
The way he threw that ball, McKee, it was so. And this is a guy who came in. Talk about Kenny Pickett coming in cold the week prior. Tanner McKee almost never runs with the ones. Probably never
this
runs
week he
with
did.
The ones.
This week he did.
I guess he did a little bit. But up until this week, he didn't run. He doesn't run with the ones. That's not his role. That's not his job. And he went out there, and the way he threw that ball, like, I mean, we saw earlier in the game the Kenny Pickett one where his glove might have been a little sticky. But Tanner McKee, like, those were impressive.
Pickett did have the one that the touchdown pass to Devontae. He had some nice maneuverability in the pocket. But like we saw it in preseason the last couple of years with Tanner McKee. He looks really good throwing the football. And I feel like he can make almost every throw. So like he deserves a chance. And I think, like, obviously if Jalen doesn't play this week, if they decide not to play any of the starters, I would go with Tanner McKee this week. And especially if Kenny Pickett's ribs are really broken or whatnot.
Oh, if they were on fringes of being broken, they're broken now. So.
Yeah, that's not a fun injury. Like,
no, definitely
hurts.
Not. By the way, Cincinnati plays Pittsburgh. Cleveland plays Baltimore. Okay. That's the Saturday, January 4th.
Oh, right. Baltimore,
North.
Baltimore's like an 18.5-point favorite over Cleveland.
Yeah, 18 right now on
That's
ESPN.
Crazy.
That's
18
massive.
points is a lot in the NFL. That's a college line.
Huge.
But yeah, so as Quentin says, QB controversy, the only one is Tanner McKee should be the number 2 QB.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
But I think we both agreed on that when the Kenny Pickett trade was made. We were kind of like, he could be a serviceable backup. And then when we started seeing them Pickett versus McKee in the preseason, we were sitting there and we were like, nah, it's just not it. But otherwise, returning to the game, Devontae had a good game. AJ Brown threw for 36 and a touchdown. Not a whole lot to say there. Oren Burks played almost every snap, which is pretty impressive. Of course, we knew he was going to stay out there even when the starters came out because he's a backup linebacker. But next man up mentality, they do a great job of it there. Mekhi Becton, what are your thoughts on Mekhi Becton? He was seen walking off the field, highly, highly emotional. I know I saw this tweet from a Jets fan that it was like when the Jets ask you to play right guard, and it's the tweet that he put out there that I am a left tackle, and then the difference of coming over to Philadelphia and Stoutland Mekhi Becton earned himself a contract.
Mekhi Becton also said that he was never asked by the Jets to play guard. So, I don't know who we would believe there, and I don't know why Mekhi Becton would lie about that. Now,
if just because he wasn't
asked,
Woody Johnson.
Just because he wasn't asked doesn't mean that if he was asked, he would have done it. But that's what coaching does, and being in a good. The Jets are a shitty organization.
Horrible. Look at the mess they're about to. There's a chance they lose Garrett Wilson in favor of keeping Aaron Rodgers around. That's unfathomable.
Woody Johnson,
and then that athletic report that came out about Madden ratings and stuff, like that's just.
And his son, Woody Johnson's son,
unreal.
Like getting a little more power. Like, yeah, it's bad organizations continue to do bad things, and that's what happened. Like that's an organization. They're the longest, or they're the team that has not made the playoff. They have the longest playoff drought in the NFL right now, and I think the last time
they have one of the longest in North American sports.
I think it was like 2010, 2011 was the last time they made the playoffs. So.
Yeah. It's a massive drought. It's crazy. I think actually it's championship droughts. I think they have the longest championship drought in North American sports right now. So, at the end of the day, there's not much more to say about this game. CJ Gardner-Johnson, you see how crucial he is. Second in the NFL in interceptions. He got himself up to 6 interceptions. Doesn't get much easier than the first one thrown by Cooper Rush.
Took one from Quinyon.
Yeah, well, exactly. Kenyon Mitchell's just next year he's going to explode. Let's just face either the playoffs or next year Mitchell's going to explode and go for these 6-8 interceptions.
I do have a question. Do you think he's hit the rookie wall? Like he gave up another touchdown, this week, and there were a couple routes that like he was slipping and falling out. I don't know what that was all about, but like he gave up a couple more catches this week than he typically does, and he obviously gave up a touchdown to McLaurin on last week. Like, do we think that? I mean, playing this deep into the season, a guy coming from Toledo didn't really make bowl games and whatnot. Do we think that he's hit the rookie wall?
I mean, you could argue that he's hit a bit of a rookie wall. If you're asked, if the ask was, would I be concerned about it? Definitely not. I mean, he's gonna get there. We saw with Jalen Carter, he kind of hit that rookie wall, and then he focused on conditioning, came back this year, and is an absolute beast. He might have hit a wall. I hope that he hasn't, because we definitely need him in the playoffs. Yeah. We need him to be able to shut down his side of the field and do his role, because that's him now. It's him. It's Slay, and they're responsible for shutting down each side of the field respectively. So hopefully it's maybe this just stretch of a couple games where he's hit a wall and he'll get back into focus come the playoffs, knowing what's on the line with the playoffs and everything. But obviously, yeah, you could definitely say that. I mean, I agree. Toledo, like, this is probably, I don't know the exact number of snaps Kenyon Mitchell's played, and I can definitely look into it after this, but Kenyon Mitchell's probably played more defensive snaps this year than he probably played in any season in Toledo. I agree. Easily. And that can play a factor in a rookie season. That can absolutely play a bit of a factor for sure.
And he's somebody that could, now, again, I mentioned that you can only have like 7 inactives or whatever it is. So, like, but he's also somebody that could probably use a break this week. Maybe this is the week that you give Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo the go at cornerback. Let Slay and Mitchell, take a break. Even DeJean, you throw Maddox out there. Again, like, if you can't sit 22 starters, it just can't happen. So there's going to be some starters out there, but this is where you can use more of a rotation. Bring in some of the backup guys in this game against the Giants coming up, so that you keep these guys at least like going through the motions of playing a game, but also don't. Again, Jalen Carter's played about 85% of the snaps. Let him give 5 to 10 snaps if he wants, if that's what you want to do, and get him off the field. This is a de facto 4th preseason game for the Eagles, and you mentioned it. They haven't had a bye since week 5. That's like, I think that's the big. If the Eagles would have had a bye 4 weeks ago, I think that they would go for the record with Saquon. But the fact that they haven't had a bye in 11 weeks or whatever it is, this will be your bye. This is your bye for the playoffs, and then you go and get ready for the first game at the Link sometime next week in the wild card weekend.
So Kenyon Mitchell, 954 snaps this year. The most he played in college was 883 in 2022. He played 781 in the year that he declared for the draft. So yes, this is the most he's ever played, and by a game's worth, at least a minimum game's worth margin. So definitely, I mean, I agree with you. Like, if they had the bye week, week 8, week 9. They're probably 100% game to go for this record. These guys are exhausted. Some of their bodies are battle worn. Like, you see Nakobe Dean. He was out this week with an abdomen injury, but he's got that brace on his arm. You saw like Kenny Pickett was wearing that big vest. Who is it? I think there's an offensive lineman who's wearing a big heavy knee brace. Like, there's some guys going through things. That they're going through things. There's some guys who've been on the injury report since the bye week multiple times. They need this week. Now, you could argue for a guy like Jalen Hurts. Like, do you want to see him? Me and you, I think we're both in agreement. We'd love to see him for a series or two, just to make sure that he's not going in completely cold 4 weeks without really playing football heading into the wild card weekend. But guys who've played through this all, like Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Zach Bond, Kenyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, some of those guys, definitely give them the time off. But when it comes down to it, and it may be contradictory in our sentiments about things, but I think that Jalen Hurts would rightfully be in a good spot to go out, at least for a series or two, just to be a little fresh going into the wildcard weekend.
Yep, and especially you're going to go up against the physical defense, regardless of who you play, Green Bay or Washington. and they both you've seen them both. Now, granted, we haven't seen Green Bay since week 1 in Brazil. Both teams are different since then, and we just recently saw Washington. And if you had your druthers, if you could pick one of those two teams to face in the wild card round, who would you pick?
I think I'd pick Washington. They've had so much luck. Like some people have said, they're a Jalen Hurts failed Hail Mary, or a right played Hail Mary by Chicago's defense away from being a 9-7 team. And I understand, if the Eagles were in the same position, wins are wins. I get it. We've had seasons where we had some of the ugliest wins. Half our games were the ugliest wins you're ever going to see. I get it. But there's a part of you that has to stand back, even as a Commanders fan, and say there's been a lot of luck on our side. You can't say that necessarily about, the Eagles, because they're top 5 offense, top 3 defense. Like, it's not necessarily the same. Whereas with the Commanders, their defense is middle of the pack, and in some areas, some of the worst in the NFL. So there's a lot of luck on your side. And I think, come the playoffs, sometimes that luck continues to roll. But I feel like they've had a lot of their luck in the season, and luck may run out come playoff time. But personally, I'd like the Commanders. What about you?
Probably the Commanders. I mean, Jaden Daniels is good. And we saw what he was able to do against us. But it did take Jalen Hurts getting hurt. Now, they did turn the ball over 5 times. So, and still won. So they deserve credit for that. But it took Devontae Smith catching the ball. He catches 99 out of 100 times. It took a lot for the Eagles for Washington to beat the Eagles last week. But you never know. So I don't think Jaden Daniels is coming into Philly and winning a playoff game. I just don't see that happening at all. I think Green Bay is a better team. Now, I know Green Bay didn't look good. Green Bay's losses have been to Detroit, Minnesota, and the Eagles. The 3 best teams in the NFC. So, I know that they're they're stuck in the best division of football. It happens. Again, their losses have been to the 3 best teams in the NFC. And Jordan Love, we saw what he did last year in the playoffs against Dallas. He can go. He doesn't mind going. They don't mind going on the road to a playoff atmosphere. Now, granted, Dallas is not Philly in terms of the atmosphere, but I just think that getting a rookie quarterback to come here, I don't think Washington is on the same caliber level as the Eagles are.
No, I definitely agree with you on that point. Well, we didn't talk much about this game, but it was a 41-7 game. It was a blowout. We hit on Saquon Barkley. We hit on Tanner McKee. We hit on the key points that we wanted to address. Is there any final comments you want to make before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, we're going to talk about it later this week. Hopefully we have word on what's going to happen if any of the starters are going to play against the Giants Sunday. I personally would like to see Saquon go for the record. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I really do think Nick Sirianni is contemplating it.
Definitely is. I mean, he's not going to show. He doesn't want to show his cards either. So he doesn't want to go in with the Giants. I mean, but let's be serious. The Giants, if you show your cards and say we're putting out some of our starters, it's damn, we're getting blown out. If it's, we're putting out the backups, damn, we have a chance to win a game again that we should not win.
I don't think that matters. I would be intrigued, do the Giants want the number 1 pick? So, would they kind of lay down for Saquon? If that makes sense? He still has friends.
I don't think these players respect Dayball enough that they're going to lay down, or Scone and Dayball enough that they're going to lay down. I think they're going to play their hearts out just like they did. And asking Drew Lock to lay down, you'd have to not.
Well, that's on offense. I'm talking about their defensive side of the ball.
Still defensively, even, yeah.
How obviously you don't want to be the team that gives up the record, but especially that it's going to be Saquon who played there for 6 years and whatnot. It was one of the most popular Giants in a long time. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens. My prediction, if a decision's made before we're back on, I don't think the starters are going to play, but I would like the starters to play. offensively. Defensively, I don't care what we do defensively. Let them all get breaks. They need it. Go with the backups. Go with Trot Jr. Go with Bryce Huff because he needs to build a market so we can trade him in the offseason. Moro Jomo, go with him. Go with Teron. Do we still have Teron Jackson? Whatever. Go with him. KJ Henry, go with him. Like, go with the young defensive line. Trot Jr., Oren Burks, go with the young linebackers. Go with Maddox and Ringo and Rogers.
I'd be interested to see
McCollum, Sidney Brown.
Be interested to see getting Ringo out there. Don't care to see Maddox. Just hopefully, it'll solidify that this is the end of the road. Who cares Who cares if he's out there?
Hey, look, Malik Neighbors, he went for $170 yesterday. He might go for another $170. Who cares?
Massive.
Who cares? Like, I kind of want the Giants to win. So again, they drop out of the top 5 in picks, and they can't get Shador, they can't get Cam Ward, and they'll be stuck with having to trade for a quarterback or stuck with Drew Lock, whatever it is. But yeah, like, let the Giants do, again, dumb organizations do dumb things, and that's what the Giants are, a dumb organization.
Great words to wrap us up tonight. We're going to move on to next week, the New York Giants, probably another nice, easy preview episode, unless, Nick Sirianni drops a bombshell that the starters are going to play and they're going to see what Saquon can do. We'll see, and we'll be chatting about that, like you said, LJ, on Friday. We are here. It is week 18. It feels like we waited years for the season to start, and now, like a gust of wind, it is gone. Mm-hmm. And we are headed towards wild card weekend pretty much mentally as an Eagles podcast and as Eagles fans. We're looking to wild card weekend and what's going to happen. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Join us again on Friday, same time, same place. Eagles Pimple Network. Follow them everywhere so you get the most up-to-date shows. Facebook, X, Twitch, everywhere you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow great shows that come out of the Eagles Pimple Network, especially with draft season coming up. A lot of guys love their draft content here, so make sure you hit subscribe, thumbs up wherever you check out your podcast. Follow LJ at LJ Harrell 54, myself Connor 10 at Connor 10 on Twitter, and of course the Kelly Green Hour page on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. For now, on to week 18 we go, and we will see you all on Friday.